This week on the CTreySports One-on-One show, we got Noah Reed join us all the way from Bismarck, North Dakota, way up north compared to where I am in Phoenix, Arizona. Noah, thanks for joining us, man. It's great to have you on. For those of you who don't know, he was the voice of the IFL on Stadium this past summer, and he is also one of the play-by-play voices for BEK Sports Network, which is essentially the regional sports network for the North Dakota state. Noah, it's great to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to talk shop a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. So we'll get to the whole BEK Sports and the IFL and Stadium thing in a bit here, but I always start this off with everyone. How did you get into sports broadcasting and mainly play-by-play announcing to start with? Did it start in college, high school, or elementary school?
Yeah, so funny enough, I knew that for a long time that that's what I've wanted to do, but my parents tell me a story that when I was 4 years old, I told them that I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, and now I'm 27 years old, kind of living out that dream. So that's pretty cool. I do remember being as young as middle school, knowing that that's what I wanted to do. I don't remember saying that at 4 years old, but I do believe my parents that I probably made that comment. But when I got into high school, I got involved a little bit in it. I played basketball in high school, both for the high school team and for AAU. And so I didn't have a lot of time to be calling games, because I was always in season, so to speak. But it did start a little bit in high school. My high school radio and TV teacher, his name was Nick Altman. He brought me in. It was a freshman in radio class, and he kind of got me started in it and loved it ever since. But did a little bit of like some softball and some baseball, and occasionally would do some girls basketball games whenever I wouldn't have a basketball game of my own during season. And then progressing into college is kind of when I really started to take it seriously. And I thought I was taking it seriously in high school, but I thought, hey, I can just show up to the game and have some rosters in front of me and some stats in front of me, and I can just call the game, which anybody in this industry knows, no, that's not the case. And I was really fortunate when I got to school at Ball State and I became part of the SportsLink program. I had some upperclassmen ahead of me, juniors and seniors, who were really talented, who have done it before, who have been doing it for a while. And they kind of showed me the ropes of, hey, this is how it's done the right way. This is how you prep. This is how you make spotting boards, talking with coaches, making sure you're having storylines and everything in place. And so spent 3 years at Ball State, where I got to do a little bit of everything. I was hosting radio shows. I was calling games on radio. I was calling games on TV. Really fortunate to get to do that. And that's one of those things too, where I don't take for granted what I had at Ball State, because from the day I stepped onto campus there, I was able to do things. I was able to pick up a camera and shoot things and do stuff behind the scenes. But it wasn't very long into my time at Ball State where I was hosting radio shows and calling games on radio. And I think even 6 or 8 months into my time at Ball State, I was calling my first game on TV as a color analyst, not as play-by-play. It wasn't until
was this for like a student radio TV station at the time, or?
Yeah. So it was all student radio, and then we would occasionally, not a lot, but we would occasionally do games just all student-based and student-run that would air on Comcast Indiana at the time. And then by the time my senior year rolled around, I was doing games on ESPN3 and ESPN Plus too, which was pretty cool for someone to be a senior and have that kind of opportunity in college. And now you're seeing it more and more over the last 3 or 4 years for a lot of people to get those kind of games, which I think is awesome.
That is amazing. When you were going to Ball State, before you made that decision, was there any other schools that you were considering, like possibly Arizona State, which is the school I'm in right now?
Now, Arizona State's awesome, and the Concrete school is great too. But for me, I played a year of college basketball at a small school in Ohio first. And so coming out of high school, I was actually more so focused on playing. And I was getting recruited by a lot of Division III and NAIA schools. And so that was mainly my focus coming out of high school. And I went and played a year at Defiance College in Ohio, and loved it there. Had a lot of fun. Team was great. We won a conference championship the 1 year I played, but it kind of hit me that off season where it was like, you can do this for 3 more years and have a lot of fun, and it wouldn't necessarily be the wrong decision to do that. But I also realized that after college, I didn't have a playing career set up for me, professionally after that. I was going to be done after college. And so it hit me that I was like, maybe you should set yourself up better for broadcasting and set yourself up better for the next 40 or 50 years of your life after school as opposed to the next 3. And it was a really tough decision for me to leave, but I decided that was the right way to do it, was to leave. And for me, it really wasn't much of a choice for me. I had some friends that went to Ball State. I knew people that were a part of the Sports Link program at Ball State. And I looked into Indiana a little bit, but outside of those 2 schools, that were in my home state of Indiana, I didn't really look anywhere else. I knew how great Syracuse was. I knew how great Arizona State was. I knew how great Missouri was, all those places. But for me, it was kind of Ball State or Indiana. And then Ball State was one of those places where I knew I was going to get in right away and get to do things both, behind the camera, behind the scenes. And if I was doing things well that way, I knew I was going to get some opportunities really early in my career on air. And so for me, that was enough to make the decision to go to Ball State.
Yeah, that's pretty quite amazing. And then moving on to your time after college, basically, where you are now, you said you've done some ESPN streams, which now, I mean, I'm sure it was different at the time because ESPN3 is essentially ESPN Plus. Now that's where they do all the like big basketball streams and all that. That's too much of an overflow for the main ESPN networks. So you've done that, but also how did you get into BEK Sports and their sports network?
Yeah, so I spent the first few months after I graduated in Peoria, Illinois, and I did some minor league baseball broadcasting and media relations for the Peoria Chiefs, who at the time were the low single A affiliate for the St. Louis Cardinals. They're now the high A affiliate of the Cardinals. But I was only there for 4 or 5 months and didn't even finish the full season there. Because I got offered this job at BEK Sports. It was a full-time job and it was in TV play-by-play, which is what I've always wanted to do. And so for me, it was a great opportunity. But how that happened was actually, I saw the opening for it and thought to myself, I don't know if I want to apply for this. I don't know if I want to move, across the country to North Dakota where I don't know anyone. I don't know anything about it. None of that. But luckily, there was a guy who graduated from Ball State, I think 4 years before me. His name's Pat Boylan, and he's now with the Indiana Pacers, does some sideline reporting for them, fills in as their TV play-by-play guy. He's the full-time Indiana Fever, the WNBA team's play-by-play guy. So he's gone on to do a lot of really good things. Well, his first job out of college was this exact job at BEK Sports. He also had the job here. And so I kind of reached out to him, told him what I was looking at, what I was thinking. And he told me, he said, hey, the boss that was my boss when I was there is still the guy that's in charge of things there. He goes, my advice for you would be to apply. Doesn't mean you have to take the job. Doesn't mean you're even going to get offered the job. He goes, but you should apply for it. And he goes, I'll put in a good word for you. And you can see where things go from there. Well, sure enough, I sent my application in, heard back from him pretty quickly, had my first interview, had a second interview about a week later. And a day after the second interview, I had the job offer, and I don't know, 3 or 4 days later, I had signed on and said, all right, I'll be moving up to Bismarck, North Dakota in about 2 weeks after I gave my 2-week notice with the Peoria Chiefs, but moved up here in July of 2017 and been up here for 4.5 years now.
Wow. Yeah. That was pretty much right around the time I graduated high school. So time really does fly by, but because I'm in that part as a broadcaster myself, where I'm trying to decide if, leaving, going outside my comfort zone, leaving kind of my hometown, because I grew up in the state of Arizona all my life. But, going to North Dakota where you don't know anyone, it's basically like hitting the reset button on getting yourself out there. That had to be scary for you, making that transition. But what advice would you give to those broadcasters who pretty much go to a completely different town and essentially starting new?
Yeah, it is hard. You're right. It's scary. It's tough. I had a little bit of a taste of that because the summer in between my junior and senior years, I worked for a summer collegiate baseball league for a team in Washington, D.C., right outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia. And I moved out there not knowing anyone, not knowing anything about it, and spent 3 or 4 months of my summer out there calling baseball games, and then did something similar again with Peoria, where I moved out there, where I didn't know anyone, and it was for a job opportunity to call games on radio and do media relations, which was incredible. The difference between those two things were I knew that those were, the first one was an internship, the second one was a seasonal job. So I knew I was only going to be in Virginia for 3 or 4 months. I knew I was going to be in Illinois for 6 months, and those were both part-time seasonal jobs. It was scary coming up here because that was a full-time job, right? I'm not up here for 3 months or 6 months. I'm here 12 months a year, and obviously you have time off and you get to go and leave and visit family, visit friends, all that stuff with any full-time job, right? But this is where I'm based now, right? And so that was a little bit of a difference for me, where I moved up there. I'm like, well, I've been through this before, which is true. I had been, but it was definitely at a different, bigger scale now. And my advice with that to anyone is take chances, take risks, take leaps. I'm so happy that I did this, because if I would have decided, it's North Dakota, I don't know anyone up there, I don't know anything, maybe I'll stay around home, I wouldn't be having as much fun as I'm having. I wouldn't be having as much success as I'm having. And I love everything about it. I work with incredible people. Everyone on our staff is great to work with, talented people that care about one another, that care about each other's families and personal lives and all that stuff, which is awesome. And so I guess my advice is it's not the wrong way to do it or the bad way to do it to stick around your hometown. Plenty of people do that, and plenty of people find success. I just know for me individually, getting away from my hometown, getting away from my home state, where I got to meet new people and be a part of new things, was an eye-opening experience for me, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I had a span of time this summer between my junior and senior year where I'd moved out there to Virginia for the summer, up until the next summer when I moved out here, where I had lived in 4 different cities and 4 different states in about a 12 or 13 month span. That was challenging. That was tough. But I look back on that, and it was some of the best times I've ever had, because I learned a lot about me individually. And I learned a lot about broadcasting and how to be a better broadcaster and all those sorts of things. So my advice for people is to do it. That's easy for me to say as someone who just up and left and just said, hey, I'm going to go for it. And it's worked out for me. But it's also not the wrong way to do things if somebody's looking to stay around their hometown or stay relatively close either. So I've enjoyed it the way I've done it. Doesn't mean it's the only way to make things happen.
Oh, absolutely. And not only, like, I'm sure you've done, football and basketball broadcasts for BEK Sports, but I mean, you've pretty much done every single sport possible, if I'm correct, like baseball, volleyball, softball, hockey, and even wrestling. That they pretty much do it all at that sports network, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we do a little bit of everything. I mean, we're doing football and volleyball in the fall, basketball, hockey, wrestling in the winter, baseball and softball in the spring. And we even do, I haven't personally done this. My boss does most of this stuff because it's what he knows really well, but we even do rodeo up here, which isn't something that's common a lot of places, but North Dakota, man, it is. People love their rodeos. And we even, we televise and we broadcast rodeos. When I was in college, I did some gymnastics too. I did some field hockey. So there's a lot of different things. I've done some soccer too here at BEK, which I didn't mention that in the fall with football and volleyball, but do soccer as well. We do a lot of different things, and I that's been great for the company. It's been great for our network. We get to, you don't just highlight the football and basketball players, but you highlight the high school and college athletes that are doing the quote unquote smaller sports, and recognizing the people that do soccer and softball and volleyball and all that stuff. And for me, selfishly as a broadcaster, it's helped me a ton to be able to do all those things and say, I can broadcast 8, 9, 10, 11 different sports, as opposed to only knowing how to do football, basketball, and baseball, the main sports or whatever. But yeah, we do a lot of different sports up here.
So basically, I mean, for you as a broadcaster, this is like good practice for the Olympics. I mean,
in a sense, it sort of is like that, right? And I definitely haven't done a lot of sports that are in the Olympics. There's a lot of different things there, but that's a really good comparison, right? Because there's the Olympic sports is what they call them, right? Where, the field hockeys, the gymnastics, the volleyballs, the softballs, wrestling, all that kind of stuff. You're exactly right.
Yes, absolutely. And then, taking a look back at this past year, and in 2021, it was kind of a transitioning year out of the pandemic and all that. Naturally, I'll go to 2021 a bit. I don't want to talk about 2020 here, when the shutdown happened, and that day in March when Rudy Gobert tested positive. I always call it the day that sports stopped, and it was insane, especially for me as a broadcaster, because internship opportunities went away. Just anything to talk about sports, like doing sporting events, working those games, went away. Everything just went at a complete full stop. And so what was that like for you when everything just went on a full shutdown from March essentially all the way till July or August?
Yeah, it was tough. And I think about what you just mentioned, being a college kid who was looking for internships during that time. That would have been tough, man. That would have been, because my internship, both between my sophomore and junior years and my junior and senior years, those helped me tremendously to prepare me for this industry and to call games and to do media relations and do things outside of calling games. And to have those opportunities really just completely wiped away would have been tough. And I've said that plenty of times, where it was like, I was at least glad I was a couple of years into the industry and not trying to get internships and trying to get opportunities. Of course, I was wanting to call games and get as many reps as I could, but then the sports world shut down and it was tough. I went from calling 3, 4, 5 games a week to all of a sudden having nothing to do and sitting at home all the time. I mean, it's no different from anyone else, right? We all sat at home for how many months in a row and not really being able to do anything. I'm really, really fortunate that, the company I work for, the BEK Sports Network, they kept all of us on staff, kept everyone on staff, didn't have any pay cuts for people, paid people their full-time salary. And that wasn't the case at a lot of places. And forget about sports. There was a lot of people outside of sports that, were getting furloughed or didn't have jobs anymore. And then you add onto it sports, there was people losing their jobs like crazy. And in the sports world, not many, there are some obviously that are full-time, but a lot of opportunities are freelance or part-time. So all of a sudden those jobs are gone and your way to bring in money is almost non-existent. And so I was fortunate in that sense, but it still did make things difficult as far as not getting to call games all the time, which was tough. And I think we went from, mid-March, that day where everything shut down, until I think we found some random local high school baseball, like Legion baseball or something like that, in the summer. I want to say it was mid-July, maybe, but still, that was 4 months of doing no games whatsoever. And so it took a little bit to get back into it. And, then you do 1 or 2 baseball games, and all of a sudden we weren't doing anything for another month or so until high school sports started back up in August. And everyone knows there was cancellations and postponements all the time with that. And, a schedule that was fluctuating all over the place. But, to answer the question, it was tough, right? It was tough for everyone. It was difficult to not call games. And when the sports world did finally start to resume again, everyone was excited about that.
Oh, absolutely, man. It was great to see everything back, and especially arena football, which we kind of transitioned into that. So, the IFL season got canceled in 2020 and they came back in 2021 and became a pretty big year, especially for BEK Sports and you guys involved, because you guys got to produce for the first time in at least more than 10 years, the national broadcast IFL games. But you guys also do local broadcasts for the Bismarck Bucks, who are a team out there. And so when you got introduced to arena football, were you aware of like the sport? Did you have some knowledge of it, or was it something completely new for you and just a completely different challenge?
Very new for me. Very new for me. I had heard of it. I knew what it was, but I had never been around the IFL, the Indoor Football League specifically, and certainly didn't know all the difference in the rules and how different the game was played. And in fact, the very first game that I ever called, I don't know the exact date on this. I'll have to look back and check, but it was like March 9th of 2020. So the 2020 season for some teams started like a week before COVID hit. For most teams in the IFL, it didn't start until after everyone had their first game canceled, everyone had their first, whatever, and then the season as a whole collapsed. But we had one game, and it was for BEK Sports Network, where we do all of the Bismarck Bucks games. We did the San Diego Strike Force at the Bismarck Bucks on opening weekend, and it was a Sunday afternoon, like March 8th, 9th, somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact date, but that was the first time I'd ever called an IFL game, an arena game, different than your traditional 100-yard football field. It's the first time I'd called indoor football in my life. And it was one game. And then after that was when sports went on pause, and then didn't call another indoor game until this past year, when we had that deal where our company was contracted out to produce the game of the week on Stadium.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because Bismarck and at the time, a new expansion team in Oakland, the Oakland Panthers, played the same day. And I believe they were playing at the Oracle Arena, which is now renamed since the Warriors left. And they were at least hours away from kickoff, and they called the game, because I believe it was on the same day that Gobert tested positive and the whole implosion took place. But yeah, that was very interesting. But back going forward to this past year, 2021, not only is BEK Sports now, they produce the Bismarck Bucks games, but you guys also got the producing rights to broadcast the IFL on Stadium Network, which now Stadium, for those who don't know, that's owned by Sinclair. They just launched Bally Sports. They're kind of the new guys on the block. What was that kind of experience like for you guys, especially because I know you and your guy Chris Clayton have called a few games, and you guys have pretty much gotten to travel, go on a huge IFL tour that entire summer.
Yeah, the process for us from start, is figuring out that like this might be a possibility, to us being thrown on the road in week one was really quick. Like we didn't find out about it. We heard it was a possibility through our company's CEO that like, hey, this might be in the works, this might be happening. We heard about that in February, maybe late February, early March of 2021, and the season was pushed back. The season itself started late April for some teams, but we didn't have our first IFL game of the week until I think it was like May 15th or something like that. So we didn't have our first game till mid-May. We heard it was going to be a possibility, it potentially could happen late February, but then we went almost a full month without hearing anything. We were asking what's the update on this, and nobody knew anything. And all of a sudden, I think it was mid-April, 4 weeks before our first game, that was like, okay, yep, this is going to happen. And so we put together a schedule. We had people on our staff people on Stadium staff, and then people on the actual media rights holders. They're called the Team LLC. And so they actually were the owner of the rights, and then they contracted us out to be the production company that travels all over and does all those games. And so we met with them a couple of times, figured out what we were going to do. And it was a very much learn on the fly kind of thing, where week one, our shows probably did not look clean. There was a lot of mistakes. I called week one, so I can tell you straightforward, there were a lot of mistakes in week one and week two and week three. And, it just progressively got better and better as time went on. But it was awesome, man. There's four of us on staff, and all four of us called a game at some point or another. Myself, Chris Clayton, Nick Tidrow, David Sugarman, all four of us got the opportunity to call games on Stadium for the IFL game of the week, which was really cool. And like you said, it was we traveled all over the country. I mean, it was week one was in Sioux Falls, and then I know we were in Des Moines, Iowa after that. Then we were in our hometown of Bismarck. The Bucks had the game of the week, and then after that, I was gone 3 straight weeks in Phoenix. We had our first game with the Rattlers in Phoenix, and then Tucson the next week, and then Prescott for Northern Arizona. After that, I think we went Frisco, Texas, right outside of Dallas, a couple of weeks in Spokane, back to Frisco, back to Phoenix. Albuquerque, New Mexico 1 week. We were in Boston for the playoffs. So it was a crazy travel schedule. And at one point I had done the math, and I was averaging being on a flight every 3 days for about a 4-month span. And for a lot of people, like, that's a tough, strenuous schedule, right? And there was definitely times where I was worn out and tired, but that's what I want, man. Like I thrive in that. I enjoy that. I want to be all over the place. It was essentially like, all right, we'll send you out on a Thursday. You'll call a game on a Saturday. You'll come home on a Sunday, and you'll get back and do it all over again on Thursday of that week again. So it was a crazy, busy travel. And I'm still pretty young. I'm 27. I'm 4 years into it. It has been the absolute highlight of my career so far, getting to meet new people and travel the country to call games, which is what my passion is.
And of all the IFL teams you've seen, because you guys pretty much did a good job of doing at least one telecast at all the IFL team sites. What do you have like a particular favorite of all the home teams you've seen, like the way they do the games?
Listen, I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you. Arizona is top notch, man. Like the Rattlers, the way that the Rattlers just conduct things is such a professional manner. And listen, it helps when you're as good as what they've been for so long now. I mean, Kevin Guy, he's an incredible head coach, and Ron Schertz, the owner. I mean, and just from top down, everybody in the front office, everybody on the coaching staff, the players, the interns, like everyone's incredible there. And it's a very professionally run game day. And it also doesn't hurt too that the arena that you guys play in, you guys, it's a big arena and it's filled, right? I mean, that place is filled all the time. And so having the United Bowl there this year was extra special, that the championship game got to be played in front of thousands and thousands of fans. In the I'm blanking on the new name of the arena. It was always Talking Stick or just Phoenix Suns.
No, it's funny you mention it. So at the start of the season, it was called the Phoenix Suns Arena because the previous sponsor, which was Talking Stick, so it was Talking Stick Arena, they opted out, which I guess the Suns weren't suspecting that. So it's kind of like a last minute thing that just happened unexpectedly. So then it went completely nameless. We were told it's going to be called Phoenix Suns Arena. It's the temporary name until they find a new sponsor. And then the Suns made the NBA Finals. I think that kind of reflected them like, hey, I mean, we should probably sign a new deal, all that to reflect the new name. This could be a good launching point. So now it's called the Footprint Center, and it's based off of a sustainable materials company from my hometown in Gilbert. So it's now called the Footprint Center. And it's been called that ever since. And what's interesting, I think it's like the fourth name. When I grew up, it was called America West Arena, but that name doesn't exist anymore. So they've been through a bunch of name changes for sure. So
yeah, and I remember because the first game I did there was in June, and I remember saying, welcome inside Phoenix Suns Arena, and then we did the United Bowl, and I remember saying, welcome inside the Footprint Center. So I remember that the name changed during the season, and also too, I want to add too, like there wasn't a single place we went where it wasn't really welcoming, where the hospitality wasn't great. Like everywhere we went, Phoenix kind of just stands out to me. And I think it's because it's been such a top-notch organization for decades now. But I mean, everywhere we went, Spokane, the people in Spokane were incredible. And in Frisco, they were great. I mean, just everywhere we went. Sioux Falls was good. Our hometown team, I think Bismarck does the things really, really nice too. So, I mean, everywhere that I went this summer, there wasn't a place where I walked out of and I was like, oh man, they don't know what they're doing. No, everyone in that league is really, really good, and they're ready for game days. They have a script. They know what they want to do. And more than anything, I think they do a great job, everyone does, of providing entertainment. That's what people are there for, right? That's what you're there to spend your Saturday night or Sunday afternoon doing, is just putting on some entertainment. And the talent in the league too is so good.
It is amazing, and I definitely agree with that. And then, so you called the home opener, which was the first Rattler game of the season. What would you say is the biggest thing that you saw that you didn't see anywhere else? Because I remember when I called my first Rattler game in, I believe, 2013, it was for a kids radio station because I was in high school at the time. They blew a cannon blast at the top rafter corners of the arena. Did that was it things like that just threw you off, like that surprised you or made you jump?
That definitely did surprise me and catch me off guard. And I even told myself going into the United Bowl, like, remember that happened, and it still caught me off guard again with that loud cannon noise. But it to me, I guess what made it stick out more than anything is just the arena, right? And I mean, and not only to be playing in that kind of arena where a team like the Phoenix Suns and Phoenix Mercury play, it seats so many thousands of people, but that place was packed. At least the couple times we were there, it was full. And every time I watched a Rattlers game that wasn't on stadium, that was done through the in-house production, which also was really good. The Rattlers have a great, in-house TV production. It's really good. Every time I watched a game there, seems like it was packed there too. And I think just the environment of of Arizona, of the Rattlers. Kind of, that's always what comes to my mind first, is what makes them stick out, is just because the environment is crazy and it's a fun atmosphere and the team wins all the time.
They make. I even told this to many people. I'm like, we won all of our home games. They make it look easy just the way that they play, but it's not. So, but also the United Bowl, which was huge. You got to call that game, and on top of that, you did the trophy presentation for that, which was pretty historic. That was probably a pretty insane game, especially since the Rattlers were coming off another nail biter, the field goal. What was that call like? Because that was the kick that was blocked by Hartley, and then they went into overtime. Powell fumbles the ball, the Rattlers, Massachusetts recovers, and then they get the field goal to win the game. Like, what was your experience calling that game?
Yeah, good memory, by the way, because you just nailed the play-by-play on exactly what happened in the final minute of the game leading into overtime. But it was just that. I mean, that's what's cool about live sports, right? You know what your open is going to be like. You can pre-record a 2-minute open, but the next 2.5, 3 hours, you're kind of at the mercy of what the game takes you in that direction. And that's what was so cool. It was a great game all the way through. I think it was a 1-possession game the entire way. And then in the final minute, Massachusetts has a field goal to essentially kind of put the game away, go up 2 scores. Blocked field goal gets returned down to it looked like he scored, but then they end up ruling him out at the 3-yard line. Arizona scores, sends it to overtime. Rattlers almost score in overtime, but fumbled at the 1-yard line. Massachusetts takes over, gets the field goal to walk it off and win it. It's probably, I told you that broadcasting the IFL and Stadium was like the highlight of my career and the most fun I've had. That game specifically, and the fact that it came in the United Bowl made it extra special. But that has to be the highlight as far as the number one best game that I've ever called, best game, most fun game, all that kind of stuff. It was in the United Bowl. And listen, when you're working with Dale Hellestrae, he's so incredibly talented and knows what he's doing. Very, very good. And I just found myself kind of, kicking back a little bit and saying, man, Dale, you take the reins here. You know what you're talking about. You're an incredible analyst. I wanted him to kind of break things down and let him run the show a lot of times. He was awesome to work with. And so many of the analysts too that we had in each of the cities were. But then that trophy ceremony that you talked about, that was something we didn't plan on doing until about Wednesday leading up to it, about 4 or 5 days before the United Bowl, where we were on the phone and Stadium brought up the idea of doing that. We're like, we can make that work. We're going to have to add a few things, maybe add an extra person, something like that. But it was pretty cool for me. Personally, it was fun because you call that game, you get through an emotional game like that. It was an exhausting game. And then it was kind of like, I sent it quickly down to our sideline reporter for that game, Julie Doles. And as soon as she took over, I quickly took my headset off and she did like 2 player interviews. And we had a 2-minute commercial. And so I had about 4 or 5 minutes to get from the top in the press box perch at footprint all the way down to field level. And a funny story there is I had my credential laying on the table next to me and I forgot to pick that up when I ran down. So I got stopped by security telling me like, hey, you can't go here. You can't go on the field. And luckily, I was in my suit and everything. And so I was like, I have to conduct the trophy ceremony on the field. And luckily we had a couple guys, both from our staff and then also from in-house at the Footprint Center that worked for the Rattlers, that were like standing there ready to hand me the microphone for me to go do the interview. So luckily they kind of like, yeah, he's good. He can come down the field. And so I got down there really with about 30 seconds to spare before we came back from commercial. So it was very quick, like talking to the commissioner really quick, me saying how, is this the way you want to do it? Whatever. And then we went into the trophy ceremony, which I think was conducted pretty well by the league and by our staff and everything. And for it being the first time we've ever done that and not knowing that we were going to do that until a few days before, I think we executed it pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure that it was stressful to process getting that done, but in the end, it all came together. And then that was exactly what you guys wanted. And I will say, you mentioned Dale Hellestrae, former Dallas Cowboy himself. He also was a color commentator at the Arizona Rattlers many years before at the local broadcast. And he's an absolute fantastic color commentator. But also, going into that moment, where you got Jawad Hatim, the owner of the team, Rayshon Kaiser, the head coach. This was their first title in franchise history. And not only that, you got the microphone. You're not just speaking to the network crowd watching, but you're also, you can hear yourself across the arena speakers. Was that nerve-wracking at all to be part of that? Pretty much, I would say that had to be the most historic, the best United Bowl in the IFL yet.
Yeah, I think it was too. I think it was a great United Bowl. To answer the question though, it wasn't all that nerve-wracking. Like I could hear myself through, the PA in the building. But I was so kind of entrenched in the moment, I guess, and making sure that I wanted to make sure that the Massachusetts franchise and their people, the owner, the coaches, Alejandro Benefield, the quarterback who was the MVP, we talked to him as well. And I just wanted to make sure that they got to be heard, right? I wanted to make sure that they got their message out, that they got to talk about what this meant to them, because you said it was the first championship in franchise history. Well, that was their first year in the IFL and only their third year in total as an organization. And to do what they did in their first year in such a good league like the IFL and only the third year ever in existence is so impressive. And so I was just trying to do my best to make sure, hey, these three guys that we're going to talk to after Todd Tryon, the commissioner of the IFL, I wanted to make sure that they all got their messages across and what the championship meant to them and to the franchise and to the Boston community. Or I guess the Worcester community. They're based right outside of Boston, Worcester. I wanted to make sure that they kind of got their message across. So I was just so entrenched in, hey, let me make sure I'm getting all the right people. Let me make sure they're getting to say what they want. Let's have a good interview. And so it wasn't like you asked, it wasn't nerve-wracking. I did hear myself over the loudspeakers in the arena, but I guess I was just so focused on the task at hand of getting that done.
Absolutely. And that, and that's really what it's all about. It's not really about putting the spotlight on yourself. It's putting the spotlight on the person that you're talking to, which in this case was the Massachusetts Pirates, and them accomplishing their first title and just their third year in existence. Absolutely exciting. Well, to close it off here, it's already over 30 minutes I see here, but what's next for you? Where can we see you on TV? You're still going to be with BEK Sports, but what's the best way that people can watch you? Is it on YouTube and all that?
Yeah. So I'm with BEK Sports and plan to be. I've gotten some pretty cool opportunities, or I've done some ESPN Plus games for Southern Illinois University where they bring me in, and I've done some football and basketball with them this summer. And then who knows? We're 2 months or so away from the start of it, less than 2 months from the start of the new season. And I think they're still negotiating, what could or couldn't be with the IFL on stadium this year. And I'm sure we'll get word of that at some point soon. We're not in those, I'm not personally in those discussions. So I couldn't tell you anything that's going on there, but it was great for the league and I hope it happens again this year. But yeah, so with the IFL stuff on stadium, done some ESPN Plus stuff with BEK Sports full time, which allows me to do a lot of high school and college stuff. BEKsports.com. We stream almost all of our events on there, which is a great way for people to watch. I've got my YouTube channel. I've got my website, noahreedbroadcasting.weebly.com, where I put a decent amount of my work. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at NoahReed_24. Which I kind of, take some pictures, put some stuff up of games I'm calling, things I'm doing like that. But man, I'm just enjoying it. I'm enjoying the journey of what everything is right now, having a lot of fun with what I'm currently at. I've got visions of the future for sure. Who doesn't? But at the same time, man, I'm having a lot of fun doing what I'm doing right now. And it's a blast of a job for sure.
Oh, that is amazing to hear. Well, good luck to you, man. I hope we get to see you in the snake pit again this upcoming season. You never know, but it was a fantastic United Bowl call, and hope to see you one day, maybe calling a NBA game or an NFL game on ESPN one day. You never know, so we'll see. But thank you, Noah.
Yeah, of course, Caleb. Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun to talk with you. I know I went over my half-hour limit with you, but I had a blast talking with you. Love talking any broadcasting I get whenever I have the chance to. So thanks so much for having me.